I was assigned to clean the toilet on my sister's wedding day because, quote, my makeup wasn't good enough for pictures. So, yeah, that was the moment I knew. Not suspected, not wondered, knew, deep in my bones, that my family didn't see me as one of them. Not really. Not even a little bit. But, let's rewind. This didn't start at the wedding. That was just the rotten cherry on a shit sundae I'd been forced to eat for 32 years. I was the second daughter, the support act, the family errand runner, emotional sponge, and backup babysitter. My sister, Claire, she was the son, the golden child, the future lawyer, future wife, future mother, mom's favorite, dad's pride. My job was to orbit her without burning up. Claire got ballet classes and birthday parties and new clothes. I got hand-me-downs and told to be grateful. When she cried, everyone ran. When I cried, it was, stop being so dramatic. I kept quiet. I helped. I stayed in the shadows and smiled through it. I even loaned Claire $3,000 for her college deposit because her dream school didn't offer her enough aid. She never paid it back, never said thank you. The wedding planning was a masterpiece in emotional warfare. Every idea I offered was shot down with Claire's signature syrupy smile. That's cute, but not really the vibe, you know? I got demoted from bridesmaid to helper, then from helper to just show up and don't make it about you. But I stayed, because family, because hope, because trauma makes you loyal in stupid ways. Then came the big day. I showed up early, hair done, makeup fresh. My dress wasn't designer, but it was elegant. I even wore the gold necklace Mom gave me when I turned 16, the only nice thing she'd ever passed down. I walked into the bridal suite, and Claire barely looked up. Oh good, you're here. Can you clean the downstairs bathroom? One of the groomsmen had a situation. I thought she was joking. I laughed. She wasn't joking. Your makeup's not really picture ready, she added. We don't want anything distracting in the photos. I stood there, smelling the sweet stink of hairspray and Prosecco. Every woman in that room looked away, even Mom, especially Mom. So I cleaned the damn toilet, scrubbed it until my knees ached. Then I walked outside, got in my car, and left. No one noticed, or if they did, they didn't care. That night, I got exactly one text from Claire. Sorry if you were upset, but you know how important today was for me. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. And her. And every photo we ever took together. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there in my tiny rented room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. And that was rock bottom. Not because of what they did, but because I finally realized they were always going to do it. Because that's who they were. And I'd let them. I'd handed them the knife and thanked them for cutting me out. But that was the last time. Because the next morning, something in me broke, and something stronger took its place. They didn't even notice I stopped coming around. No more Sunday dinners. No more group texts. No more bending over backward just to be ignored. I became a ghost in my own bloodline, and honestly, it felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. Of course, ghosts don't stay invisible for long when they stop doing chores. At first it was quiet. A few, hey, haven't seen you in a while text from Mom that reeked of performance. Then Claire chimed in, you've been distant. Are you okay? Like she hadn't banished me to the bathroom stall of her fairy tale wedding. I didn't answer. I let the silence do the talking. It's amazing how loud it gets when you stop filling it with explanations and apologies. A week later, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened, her tone was crisp business casual disappointment. You need to stop punishing the family for your own bitterness. That word bitterness, like I'd caught it from a dirty toilet brush. Not a trace of concern, just moral superiority wrapped in perfume and pearls. But the kicker? Claire went nuclear. She posted this whole Instagram carousel wedding photos, of course with a long, syrupy caption about forgiveness and healing from people who choose to hurt you out of jealousy. I was tagged, publicly, like a scarlet letter with filters and hashtags. Her fans, our extended family, even distant cousins I hadn't seen in decades liked, commented, shared their thoughts. And no one asked for my side. Why would they? Claire cries pretty. I cry alone. That post wasn't an olive branch. It was a torpedo. A preemptive strike to frame me as the villain before I even picked up a pen. I spent a week crying, not because it hurt though it did, but because I finally saw the machine for what it was. A family factory that made saints out of manipulators and scapegoats, out of the ones who dared to bleed out loud. So I stopped answering. I changed my number, blocked every one of them on socials. Claire sent emails. Mom sent guilt packages, boxed cookies, and old photos with passive-aggressive notes like, "Thought you'd like to remember what family feels like." I threw them away unopened. It didn't stop there. One night, I came home and found my apartment door slightly open. Nothing was stolen, but things had been. Shifted. Jewelry box lid off. Desk drawer ajar. A framed photo of me as a child gone. I changed the locks the next day. When I confronted my landlord, he said my mother had asked to check on me because she was worried. She'd used her fake, sweet voice. Said I'd been struggling with mood swings and might be a danger to myself. She weaponized concern. That was the moment I realized I wasn't pulling away. I was being hunted. They didn't want me back. They wanted control. And now that I wasn't crying in the kitchen or funding Claire's fairy tale, I was a problem to be fixed or erased. So I became careful. I scrubbed myself from the internet. New number, new locks, new password on every account. I even opened a new bank account and moved every cent out of the joint savings I'd stupidly opened with Mom years ago for emergencies. Emergency, me waking up. I started therapy. Not the talk it out kind, the trace the trauma, burn the blueprint, and rebuild kind. Every session peeled back layers I hadn't known were there. The chronic people-pleasing. The way I flinched at kindness because I'd only ever known affection as currency. The therapist said something I'll never forget. You weren't born broken. You were trained to believe you had to bleed to be loved. That was the day I decided I didn't need them to love me anymore. But the real turning point came 2 months later, when I got a call from an unknown number. It was from the hotel. The same hotel that hosted Claire's wedding. "Hi," the woman on the phone said. "We just wanted to confirm the direct deposit account for the event director position. We have you listed as the contact person, Director Lane." I nearly dropped the phone. Director of that hotel, Claire's wedding venue, and my new employer, because what Claire didn't know was that while she was tagging me in fake forgiveness posts, I had applied for a corporate events internship at the hotel chain she had glorified as the pinnacle of her perfect day. And after 6 months of work, I was promoted, quietly, strategically. The next wedding season, I'd be calling the shots, and Claire's anniversary was coming up. Let's just say, I had plans. You ever feel something coming before it arrives? Like the air shifts, the room stills, and somewhere deep in your chest, you just know the ground's about to split. That was me, standing in the marble-floored lobby of the Ridgeway Grand, the same place where Claire had once floated down the aisle like a Pinterest ad come to life. Only now, I wore the badge. Director Lane corporate events led, and while Claire was busy posting throwbacks with captions like "best day of my life," I was in back-to-back meetings making decisions about her anniversary gala. She didn't know. Not yet, but she was about to. It started when I saw the guest list. Claire had booked a lavish vow renewal for her second anniversary private terrace. String quartet, catering for 120. Mom and Dad were attending, obviously. A few family friends, old sorority girls, even the same damn makeup artist. The one who'd said my skin was too dewy for high-def photos. Guess who wasn't on the list? Me. Of course. But here's where things get delicious. The hotel requires financial documents for large event bookings. And guess whose name was on the payment forms? Not Claire's mine. My name was tied to the financial back end. Because 2 years ago, when I'd helped Claire apply for a wedding loan her credit too low, my name on the cosign, I was told it would be paid off immediately. Spoiler, it wasn't. I hadn't checked it in a while. Ignorance, trauma, life. But now I did. And the moment I pulled the report, $18,472.92. Still outstanding, accruing interest. Claire had made one payment, then ghosted. She never closed the account. She never told me. She just kept using it for the honeymoon, the dress, the fancy linen rentals. And I'd been unknowingly paying interest while she posted her bliss online like she was sponsored by Karma. So I did what I do best. I got quiet. I called a lawyer, not a flashy one, just a smart, vicious woman named Yvonne, recommended by a friend in my trauma therapy group. Yvonne read everything. Loan docs, emails, texts, bank statements. Her verdict? You've got her by the throat. This isn't just negligence, it's fraud. The real kicker? Claire had listed the loan on her joint taxes with her husband, which meant he might have known, or at least benefited from the write-offs. I sat in that office shaking, not from fear, from rage. The kind of deep, old rage that lives in your muscles. Not just at her, at all of them. Mom, for always picking her. Dad, for going along with it. Me, for believing if I just gave a little more, they'd finally see me. They saw me as a resource, a mule, a wallet. That week, I sent Claire a message. Brief, professional. Hi, Claire. I noticed you're planning an event at Ridgeway. As the current director of events here, I'll be overseeing your file. Also, we need to discuss the outstanding balance on the wedding loan, now reaching over $18. You have until the end of the month to settle. Otherwise, legal proceedings will begin. She didn't respond. She called 8 times. I let them all ring out. She emailed, cried in the subject line, said she was so sorry and didn't realize and thought Mom had taken care of it. Nice try. Then the gaslighting started. Mom texted, "You're being dramatic. It was a gift. You said you wanted to help. Don't ruin your sister's special day again." Again? I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I gathered every receipt, every text thread, every time I'd bailed her out financially. I added timestamps, PDF'd it all, sent a final email. Claire, per our previous message, failure to pay by the 30th will result in civil action. I've attached the full breakdown. Additionally, I'll be overseeing your event, but not as a guest, just as the person who now controls your deposit. And unfortunately, policy says unpaid debts disqualify your access to premium spaces. Best, Director Lane, she didn't reply, but I knew she read it, because 3 days later, guess who walked into my office? Mom, wearing pearls and panic. She didn't ask how I was, didn't ask about the loan. She asked, "Why are you doing this to your sister?" I was doing this? I laughed. Quiet, bitter, because you raised me to clean toilets when I should have been building thrones. And now? I own the whole damn ballroom. She left in tears. I didn't follow. Instead, I emailed Yvonne again. We were ready. The court date was set. And Claire? She was about to find out what it feels like to be the background character in someone else's story. Courtroom air is weird, dry, artificial. Like everyone's pretending this isn't just a fancy arena for petty war. I sat there in my blazer, the same one I'd worn to interviews, while Claire partied in Aruba on my credit, and stared at the woman across from me. She looked smaller, makeup caked under her eyes like armor. Her husband beside her, jaw clenched so tight, he looked like he could snap in half. Claire wouldn't meet my gaze. Her lawyer started with the usual fluff misunderstandings, emotional stress, familial generosity taken out of context. But then, Yvonne stood up and turned into a goddamn sword. She laid it all out. The loan Claire had promised to repay, the forged signatures on the rental contracts, the tax documents showing joint benefit, the texts where Claire thanked me for saving her wedding, and then the final dagger, my bank statements. Months of interest payments drained from my account while Claire posted #blessed. Claire tried to cry. It didn't work. Not when Yvonne pulled out the Instagram anniversary post with the caption, "We did it all on our own. No help, no debt, just love." The judge asked if I wanted to make a statement. My legs shook when I stood, but my voice, cold, clear. I loaned my sister thousands for her wedding because I thought I was part of this family. I was wrong. I was used, lied to, gaslit. And when I asked for repayment, I was treated like a traitor. I looked directly at Claire. "I scrubbed toilets on your wedding day. You made me feel like dirt. But today, I get to be clean. I don't want revenge. I want freedom and accountability." Claire's mouth twitched. Her husband looked like he wanted to disappear. Judgment was swift. Claire had 90 days to repay the full amount plus interest and fees. Her lawyer's face dropped like a bad souffle. There was no more pretending. The game was over. But it didn't stop there. Because remember the hotel? While all this was unfolding, Claire's vow renewal was still booked, and I still had the power to pull the plug. Per hotel policy, clients with active legal disputes or outstanding debts couldn't use premium facilities. So I revoked her terrace access, reassigned her ballroom, downgraded the catering to standard tier, even replaced the string quartet with a basic sound system playing royalty-free elevator music. I sent a formal notice, just a line. Due to ongoing legal proceedings, the following changes have been made to your reservation. She showed up the day before the event, stormed into my office, and slammed her hands on my desk. You're ruining everything. I didn't even blink. You did that yourself. She spat something about forgiveness, about mom crying every night, about how family means moving on. I stood up, slow. Family means not exploiting the one person who ever showed up for you. You said, my makeup wasn't good enough for your photos. You made me clean a toilet. And now, you want mercy. She blinked. I smiled. This is mercy. You still get your party, just not the fantasy. I turned away and sat down. She didn't move. Not for a long time. Then she left. The vow renewal happened in a beige banquet room with cold chicken and folding chairs. The golden couple smiled through gritted teeth while guests whispered, everyone saw the cracks now. But my favorite moment? The photographer approached me at the end of the night, same guy from the wedding. He said, you carry yourself different now. Stronger. I shrugged. Turns out washing yourself clean of certain people does wonders for posture. He laughed and walked away. Claire didn't speak to me that night. Neither did Mom. But I saw her standing in the parking lot, talking to the photographer, her voice shaking, hands wringing. She was unraveling. And for once I didn't reach out to save her. I got in my car, rolled down the window, and let the silence be the last thing she heard from me. 6 months. That's how long it took for the dust to settle. The court closed the case. The payment came in full thanks to a personal loan Claire had to take out, which I heard her husband wasn't thrilled about. My lawyer handled everything. I didn't speak to her once. Mom called on my birthday, left a voicemail, said she missed how things used to be. Like there'd been some golden age where I wasn't the family's unpaid maid and emotional trash bin. I didn't respond. They tried a few more times. Cousins messaged me on Facebook. An aunt I hadn't heard from since puberty sent a 2-paragraph text about how life's too short for grudges. Claire even sent a card, handwritten, said she was going to therapy, said she realized some things were unfair, said she wanted to talk someday. I put it in a drawer, not out of forgiveness, just peace. I didn't need closure from people who shattered me in the first place. Instead, I focused on me. I had moved to a new apartment, bigger, brighter. I painted the walls the color I wanted, soft green, like spring after a brutal winter. I hosted a dinner party with friends who actually looked me in the eye when I spoke. We drank wine, laughed too loud, and toasted to fresh starts. The hotel job? I kept it, got another promotion. Started training junior staff, mentoring young women who reminded me of myself, quiet, eager, a little bruised. Only now I told them the truth, that sometimes the people who break you are the ones who raised you. And that survival isn't weakness, it's the first step toward power. One night, I found myself alone on the rooftop of the hotel. The same place where, 2 years earlier, Claire had taken pictures in her custom gown while I was scrubbing vomit out of a guest bathroom. The stars were out. The city hummed. I sipped my coffee and breathed in the silence, not heavy, not empty. Just mine. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt whole. The thing is, revenge stories never really end with applause. There's no audience clapping, no spotlight, just you, and the knowledge that you made it out. I didn't burn bridges, I built exits. And when they came crawling back, all tears and nostalgia and blood-thin guilt, I didn't scream. I didn't block them in rage. I simply didn't open the door. Let them knock. Let them wonder. Let them feel the silence I used to drown in, now echoing on their side of the wall. I don't know if Claire will ever understand, or Mom, or any of them. But I do know this. They said I was heartless. But for once, I put my heart first. And damn, it finally beats free. Story 2, Alex is my name. I've always been the laid-back one in the family. And I'm 32. Between my 2 siblings, I am the middle kid. My younger sister, Emily, is the golden girl, and my elder brother, Mark, is the golden boy. That made me the silver spoon, I suppose. Though not the first choice for anything significant, it is presentable enough. Maturing, there was nothing Mark could do wrong. My dad's car was once smashed into a ditch by him. When I spilled a glass at dinner by mistake, I got off with a pat on the back and blamed it on slick roads. Mom gave me a week of cold stillness and a classic sardonic Alex that essentially established the tone for everything that came after. I thus didn't anticipate a warm reception when Mark became engaged to Lisa, the most fussy lady I've ever encountered. Lisa's family believes that the term middle class is derogatory. She inquired whether my shoes were old or simply worn out when we first met. I thought she was kidding, so I laughed. She wasn't. After that, there was always a glimmer of contempt beneath her fake grins whenever we spoke, but I remained at a distance. She and Mark deserved each other, I reasoned. Two individuals who are fixated with looks, optics, and situations that may be shared on Instagram. The concept of love appeals to them. If it received likes. From the beginning, the wedding preparations were a circus. I volunteered to assist. "We've got it covered," Mark said. I gave them a considerate engagement present. Just a framed picture of our grandparents' wedding day, nothing fancy. Something nostalgic. Lisa returned the text. "Thank you. We'll locate a location for it. In the basement, perhaps." Hey. I didn't respond. I just changed in my mind the amount I had allocated for their wedding present to something more commercial and less sentimental. I would handle it as though it were a simple requirement 1, 2, or 3 weeks before to the wedding. I got a call from Mom. "Simply dress formally. Please be kind to Lisa's family and avoid over-analyzing the situation." There was weight to that final part. As if she thought I would cause trouble, I refrained from speaking. "Yes," I replied. I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't either. I had a promise to uphold, not because I was eager. Years ago, when my father was ill, I promised him that I would always be present for important family occasions. After another round of chemotherapy, we sat in the hospital waiting room, and he made me repeat it. "Even if you receive ghostly treatment." He smiled wearily as he spoke, particularly at that time. So I came. The setting was a gorgeous vineyard, the kind you only see in classic films or magazines. There are string lights everywhere. Soft classical music is being played by a live quartet. People dressed as if they were trying out for a perfume ad. I found the coordinator when I got there early and inquired about my seat. She scowled as she looked at the list and gestured for me to move to the back of the reception tent table. "You're actually close to the fire exit. Right there is that chair." I traced her finger. It wasn't even a table, just a folding chair alone, tucked between a fake potted tree and a red exit sign. No place card, no table number, no name. Just there. I stood still for a second, thinking it was a mistake that someone would run over apologizing, maybe offering me a seat somewhere real. But no one came. People were arriving in waves. Smiles, hugs, cheers. I spotted Emily and Mom near the head table laughing with Mark. I raised a hand. Emily waved half-heartedly. Mom didn't even acknowledge me. I try not to take it personally. Tried. That's when Liza walked by, flanked by 2 bridesmaids. She saw me standing next to the folding chair and smirked. "Oh, you found your seat," she said. Then gave me this once-over like I was a thrift store donation. "Only real family gets a real table." I blinked. "Excuse me." She didn't even stop walking. "Don't take it personally," she said over her shoulder. It's just space was tight. I stood there for another full minute. Heart beat loud in my ears. The envelope in my pocket felt heavier than ever. It was a gift card, but not just any gift card. $1,500 to a luxury spa resort. Something they mentioned in passing during the engagement party. It's the only way to unwind after planning a wedding, Lisa had said, massaging her temples dramatically. I kept the card in an envelope with a handwritten note that said, "Enjoy a peaceful honeymoon on me." But I didn't hand it over. I pulled the envelope out of my coat, looked at it for a moment, then tucked it back in. I turned around, walked toward the front of the tent, and as I passed the champagne table, I said, just loud enough, "Enjoy the honeymoon while it lasts." A few people turned to look. My mom hissed, "Don't make a scene." Her eyes were hard, like she was already preparing her speech about how I ruined the day. But I didn't shout. I refrained from arguing. I just smiled because I already had a plan. A quiet, subtle, slow burn plan. I didn't leave immediately. I wanted to stay long enough to plant the seed. I made my way to the open bar and ordered a soda, casually sipping while watching the chaos swirl around the bride and groom. Lisa was glowing for now, circling from one curated photo opportunity to the next. Mark looked a little overwhelmed, but he always did when he didn't have a script to follow. The photographer shouted directions. The bridal party flitted around, adjusting bouquets and reapplying lipstick, and I just stood there like a shadow. Nobody took attention. Well, almost no one. My cousin Sarah, the only person in our family with a working emotional radar, discovered me near the bar. "Hey," she said, giving me that look. "Have compassion. Have I burned this house down with you?" If you spoke the word I just heard from the coordinator, where they positioned your foldable chair beside the fire escape, I said, lifting my glass in faux salute. Real classy. Her face twisted. "You didn't deserve that." No, I agreed, but I've learned not to expect much. We spoke for a few minutes, largely trivial things, until I noticed the DJ starting to set up. That was my cue. I nodded toward the reception tent. I suggested that you have your phone handy for later. Sarah's eyebrows went up. "Do I need to worry?" "Unless you're a fan of Lisa's curated reality," I said with a smile. She made no inquiries. She only smiled. "If you need backup, text me." Before supper was served, I sneaked out. Nobody took attention. Not Mark, not your mother, not even Lisa. When someone recorded her spinning beneath a chandelier, she was too preoccupied to fix her hair. I parked my car past a small security booth and a row of food vans along the gravel path. After a minute behind the wheel, I took out my phone and opened the folder I had been working on for the past 3 months. It began with brief screen grabs, primarily text messages from Lisa to the wedding coordinator, reprimanding her for trivial things like using too many beige napkins. Lisa made fun of Mark's mother, our mother, for being uninteresting in a few social media postings from her own Instagram account. I have a copy of the email she unintentionally keyed me on when she intended to disparage the deadweight family, including myself. The true treasure, however, was a voice memo, a brief sour tirade she recorded during her marriage shower, in which she boasted that Mark's money was only her beginning spouse fund and referred to him as a temporary face. As a prank, she had forwarded it to one of her bridesmaids. My ex, who also happened to be tired of Lisa's shenanigans, was friends with the bridesmaid Amanda. That memo, too. Just imagine that it had a date stamp, a clear audio recording, and just enough venom to make even the most ardent wedding attendee cringe. For weeks, I'd been sitting on it, trying to decide what to do with it. I wanted to be the larger person at first. Let Mark do it on his own. Lisa looked at me like I was gum on her shoe, but suddenly the folding chair, the name that was missing, drew my attention, and my own mother, didn't even bat an eye. That's what I decided to do. I sent a burner email with the audio file attached. I made a group message after that. Not all of them, just enough to cause a stir. Identify some of his groomsmen, a few of Lisa's cousins who were uneasy whenever she spoke, Amanda, Sarah, and one specific recipient who would be the actual accelerant, who was Lisa's former boyfriend. Fun fact, she had met him during a Vegas ladies' vacation only 6 weeks prior. Since I wasn't asked to speak at the reception, I provided a brief remark. "I thought I would share my toast with you here." Well done. I sent it, shut off the application. I then took a car home. I discovered 12 missed calls, 38 text messages, and a voicemail from my mother that began, "What did you do?" when I woke up the next morning, and concluded with, "Alex, you had best solve this. I didn't hear the others." I decided to read the aftermath after making coffee and opening my laptop. It had blown up in the group conversation. Amanda had sent the message to yet more recipients. It was posted to a subreddit dedicated to wedding rumors. Already it was popular. Alongside quotations from the letter, a screenshot of Lisa's Instagram post titled "Best Day Ever" was being sewn into memes. The Starter Husband Fund, my favorite book, seems like a one-time deal, but the real deal, Mark, hadn't posted anything. Nor a thank you, nor a picture. Even marriage doesn't start. A status report, radio silence. Sarah texted me at noon. The luncheon after the wedding was called off. Lisa apparently locked herself in the restroom of the hotel. Mark gave his friends a home. He seemed to have been struck by a truck. I wasn't done yet, so I didn't respond. There was yet another thing I was planning. I waited a day. Not because I was anxious. Since the quiet was louder than any argument I could have orchestrated, I must admit that I had never felt more at ease. No irate text from Mark. Don't backpedal. Lisa apologizes. Not even a little bit. We must speak with Mom. only this weird void, as if everyone was acting as though I didn't exist. Ironically, they had been treating me in this manner for years. It wasn't on their terms this time, though. The fissures were beginning to emerge by the second night. I got a call from Sarah. It was a full-on call, not a text, which was unusual for her. When I replied, I heard her release her breath as if she had been waiting all day to do so. "All right, you must understand what is going on. How are you two?" Half smiling, I said. She said, "No, really. It has the drama of an implosion." The voice memo had apparently been sent to Lisa's extended family WhatsApp group. Not amused was her aunt, who had paid for half of the wedding flowers. Already, her parents had shown little interest in Mark. They were now ashamed that their ideal daughter had used her marriage as a publicity stunt to raise money. The recording made Lisa giggle and declare, "I'll keep him around until the condo construction is finished," despite her attempts to spin it as being taken out of context. After that, it's whatever. "I'm not going to establish a future with him, even if he's nice." Yes, very endearing. Mark, meantime, was in shock, since he had always been in denial about Lisa's warning signs. Sarah claimed that he had not returned home following the wedding. He reportedly spent the most of Monday pacing the living room with his phone in hand and muttered stuff like that while staying at his groomsman, Ryan's house. Was this the way it was always? How could I have missed this? Admittedly, I wasn't pleased that he was in pain. He's my brother. Even though we weren't close, I didn't want to ruin him. All I wanted was for him to see what I had been seeing all along, that he wasn't loved by Lisa. I was never truly protected by that mother, that at most I had served as a background figure, a prop, and a trustworthy wallet. However, I hadn't even reached the final step of my strategy. See the gift card to the spa? I didn't call it off. A week prior to the wedding, I diverted it. I changed the name and moved it into a reservation. Lisa was a female coworker, someone she detested. Jasmine, her coworker. Lisa once described the person as a social climber who was always wearing imitation backs. The anecdote was told to me over a family meal when Lisa took over the table and talked about workplace politics as though no one else was paying attention. Lisa said that Jasmine had once ventured to ask her if they could divide the cost of a group meal. I thus understood what I was doing when I contacted the spa and altered the receiver name to Jasmine W. Plus Visitor. Sarah claims that the morning after the brunch was canceled, Lisa called to make the appointment, but Lisa wouldn't know until then. "Lisa, hello. Yes, please confirm that I have a couples massage reservation. It's beneath." "Hold on, what are you saying? It's been cleaned already." "Jasmine, who is she?" "Do you mean me?" On the other end, I could almost hear the glass breaking. That small detour. It wasn't retaliation, it was artistic. Finally, later that night, Mom called. I waited for it to ring twice before answering. She spoke sharply, tight with humiliation. "It was not your place to ruin your brother's wedding in that way." I reclined in my seat. I was not aware that I had been invited. "Alex, don't be smart." I wasn't attempting to be precise. As usual, she let out a sigh when I didn't comply. "You have no idea how difficult it is to keep a family together. I've been told my entire life that I'm not truly a part of it." So I answered in a low voice, "No." She hesitated. Between us, I could hear the static of her quiet. "You created a commotion." At last, she said. "No," I said. "You caused a commotion by remaining silent while you observed me sitting near the fire escape by myself. I just switched on the lights." Before she could respond, I hung up. Sarah emailed me a screen grab of Lisa's Instagram later that week. The wedding pictures were no longer there, each and every one. Suddenly, her account was filled with yoga positions, beach phrases, and ambiguous descriptions like sometimes growth means letting go and healing isn't linear. However, Mark's account had remained unaltered. Radio silence continues. I didn't stop watching, though, because the true unraveling was still taking place behind closed doors, even if the consequences had begun publicly. Mark needed to make some choices. Mom was going to have to endure the anguish of a son who had finally refused, and Lisa had answers to make. However, none of them were aware of the final step I had taken. Not quite yet. Because of the guy Lisa saw in Vegas, her ex-boyfriend. Yes, he sent me a message. It turned out that he had his own travel stubs, receipts, pictures, and an email confirming his hotel stay that included Lisa's name and his date for that particular weekend. She informed Mark that she was getting back in touch with her bridesmaids, and I suspected Mark would want to see them, but not in a spiteful manner. No more. Because sometimes quiet retaliation is the best kind. It's not mean, it's just the truth presented in the appropriate manner and at the appropriate moment. The music faded, and the least fairy tale turned back into dust when the wedding lights dimmed. At last, the moment was perfect. I waited precisely 1 week longer. Some things take time to sink in. Not because I was procrastinating. Mark, too. It took him a while to come to terms with betrayal. He was the type of man who required alone, silence, and encouragement. My brother was someone I knew. In his life, he believed in the best-case scenario, the fairy tale, and the glossy exterior that everything would work itself out if you smiled for the pictures and said the right things. He could not, however, ignore this. Not when every word seemed like a warning he didn't hear until it was too late in that voice message. Not when his spouse, who had vowed to love him, was exposed as someone who made fun of him in private, and not when others who observed and supported the delusion eventually ceased maintaining it. On a Thursday morning when it rained, I got an SMS from Mark. It wasn't long. "We must speak. May I visit?" I took a moment to look at the screen before responding. "Yes?" At any moment. He arrived looking like a man who had ran a marathon without ever realizing he had begun one, with a crumpled hoodie that didn't fit the polished, well-groomed version of himself, and bags under his eyes that made him appear pale, like a prize Lisa used to shine. Without saying anything and without taking off his shoes, he entered my flat, failed to set. He dripped as he stood there. I had no idea. Silently, he said. I am aware that he got caught slinking out after rubbing the back of his neck like he used to do when we were youngsters. It's not a justification. I had no desire to find out. I gave a nod. That's how you continued to live. He took a seat on my couch's edge as if it might vanish beneath him. I gave the entire recording 5 listens. I then reviewed some of the things you sent throughout the years and went over our messages. Things I dismissed. After pausing, he turned to face me. The only person who ever told the truth was you. I took a while to reply, not because I was at a loss for words, but rather because those words finally carried weight. My brother saw me for the first time in perhaps 10 years. As a person, not as a stand-in or a visitor in his ideal existence. He neglected to fight for his sibling. She said that I made her feel ashamed, and he mumbled that she only went through with the wedding because she didn't want to start over, and that I wasn't ambitious enough to match her image. It wasn't humorous when he laughed. Before we even said I do, she stated all of that. He remarked, "Am I really that blind?" after being silent. I rested my elbows on my knees and leaned forward. Mark, you weren't blind. All you were afraid of was what you might see. After sitting there for a while, he glanced up at last. I gave a lawyer a call. I arched an eyebrow. She was intelligent. He went on. She created various shared accounts, but did not put her name on my condo. I was informed by one of her bridesmaids that she intended to gradually deplete it over several months. They were frozen for me. An annulment is being prepared by lawyers. I blinked so quickly. He grinned glumly. It turns out that having a marriage that is almost legal makes things easier, and there is ample evidence of fraud. A pause occurred. Then he posed the unexpected inquiry. Why did you put off taking action for so long? I wanted you to find it out on your own, so I stared him in the eye. Slowly, he nodded. You didn't wait forever, though. No, I said, because you eventually went too far. Or perhaps she did. Mom might have. I'm not sure. I just know that I had been giving bits of myself to people who wouldn't even grant me a place at the table, until something broke as I sat down in that folding chair near the fire escape. I could see the embarrassment seeping into Mark's face as he winced. His voice cracked as he continued, I'm sorry, Alex, for that, for everything, for allowing her to mistreat you, for allowing me to treat you in that manner. Since it wasn't, I didn't say it was all right. However, I did express my gratitude, and it was plenty for us. For a time, we sat in quiet. The rain seemed to have something to say, but it was unable to find the right words. After a while, Mark rose up and used his sleeve to wipe his face. He informed her that she would be leaving the flat tomorrow. Didn't resist at all. I just asked if she could keep the coffee maker. I chuckled. Permit her. If she wants to start anew with only her pride and Instagram quips, she's going to need as much coffee as she can get. That gave him a genuine smile. He turned at the door before leaving. I don't believe I ever said to you how much your father trusted you. I arched an eyebrow. Once Mark went on, he informed me that you would be the one to keep this family honest if something were to happen to him. The knot in my throat was swallowed. Sadly, nobody paid attention. We're listening now, I said. Mark answered. I let out a long sigh as the door closed behind him, not because I was relieved, precisely, but because I had finally received recognition for the years I had spent being ignored, brushed aside, and treated like furniture at my own family's gatherings. Not rectified, not reversed, but observed. Mom gave me another call 3 days later. She didn't reprimand me this time. She didn't stand up for Lisa. I wasn't even asked to apologize by her. She invited me to join her for supper. Only the two of us. I nearly declined, but I had a gut feeling that this wasn't about duty. Smoothing things out for show wasn't the goal. Perhaps it was her way of acknowledging how much she had neglected the boy who always showed up while never demanding attention. I said yes, to establish new conditions at dinner, not to make amends. She didn't mention the voice memo, Lisa, or the wedding. I'm sorry I didn't notice, she said. I responded, I noticed you didn't, after giving her a long look. She then gave a nod. Something better was about to begin. 2 weeks later, Mark sought for annulment. Lisa did not argue. The social media backlash was spectacular. A wedding highlight reel that unexpectedly disappeared, cryptic messages, and removed comments. Within a month, she was back living with her parents and applying for brand offers that didn't exist because her starter spouse fund went out quicker than she could refresh her browser. I wrote a message and sent her a little folding chair as a parting present. A genuine table is only given to real families. I hope the best for you. I wasn't expecting foreclosure from her, but it's clear that she blocked me. A peaceful Sunday breakfast served as the resolution. Mark, Sarah, and I alone in a downtown cafe. We caught up on life, joked over the voice memo, and most importantly, talked like true equals. Similar to family, one that can see you, not beside the fire escape, but the sort that saves you a seat. I finally felt like I belonged in the middle when I sat there this time. Story 3, Eli is my name. I am 33 years old, and I have always been the type of man that remembers birthdays, brings a present, and offers to assist with cleanup, even if I didn't cause the mess. That has never been easy with my family. The black sheep isn't me. That's right, it's more like the invisible one. I've never had a major argument with someone, and I'm not loud or theatrical. However, as the years went by, I began to feel the gradual silent burn of being edged out of small activities, like group chats. I was left out of inside jokes and family photographs that I couldn't comprehend, despite the fact that I had been there, standing off to the side. I always assumed the best about them. They failed to remember. It wasn't personal, I remind myself. I should not have clung to that story for so long. I suppose a part of me believed that if I simply continued to show up, be helpful, and be pleasant, people would ultimately notice me again. Silent exclusion has the advantage of providing persons with plausible deniability. The worst thing is that you don't need to be told that you're unwanted. They just stop you from anticipating an invitation. I attended my nephew Liam's 7th birthday celebration last month. The child of my sister. I brought him a Star Wars Lego set, said to have been pleading with him for it, and even assisted him in constructing the initial part of it. After the party, I stayed while my sister browsed through her phone while the other grown-ups cleaned up and helped with the dishes. Informal discussion, small conversation, nothing strange. It seemed typical, as if, just if, things were leveling off. I was expressing my excitement for tomorrow's large family meal. I'm excited to catch up with everybody. It was entirely sincere. Tara, my cousin, froze in the middle of eating the remaining cake. Then she started laughing. You don't know? Hold on. Yesterday was that day. I turned to face my aunt across the kitchen as my stomach fell. I was hoping this would be a poor joke, but it wasn't. Without a hesitation, she took out her phone. She had pictures. My parents' backyard, with a large table arranged, fairy lights, glasses of champagne. To my horror, everyone dressed up. even relatives I hadn't seen in a long time. Were there speeches, group shots, or toasts? It was not a haphazard backyard cookout. The family meal was the occasion, the one that my mother throws each summer, which is essentially a reunion. My aunt began looking through the collection as if she were showing me pictures from her trip. Yes, this was just before dessert. At that point, your mother made a little statement about how blessed she is. She began to carefully say the last portion to me, as if she had realized too late that perhaps I shouldn't be hearing it. However, the moment had already been tainted. My sister, who hadn't spoken yet, looked up from drying a dish and mumbled, "Maybe take the hint next time," as my cheeks became heated and my mouth became dry. As simple as that. I remained silent. I remained still, as if she hadn't just stabbed me in the chest. I remained there for a few seconds, watching her nonchalantly wipe off a serving tray. There was an abrupt lack of air in the room. I set down the sponge, went into the living room, and took out the envelope with the additional gift card and Liam's birthday card. After sneaking in as a surprise, I headed home. I kept thinking about what she had said. Pay attention to the hint. I repeatedly played them back. The manner in which she spoke. Not in a furious manner, not maliciously, simply exhausted. As if it had been long overdue. As if I were some ignorant stranger who had failed to notice the indications, which were becoming more and more clear. As if I were a burden because I still thought I belonged. I'll be honest. In my car, I sobbed. I'm not ashamed of it, but I'm also not proud of it. It had nothing to do with skipping meals. It was about the last lucidity, the definitive affirmation that I was no longer one of them, that I had turned into, at most, a remote duty. I had trouble sleeping that night. Staring at the ceiling while lying in bed, I reflected on years of slights. I dismissed the time. They uploaded group images with folks I hardly knew after telling me the Christmas meal was only for immediate relatives. The lost birthday greetings. The group conversations I only learned about via screenshots, and the jokes that I never really understood since they took place in places I wasn't allowed to enter. Here's the problem, though. I don't look for retribution. I'm not petty. I have no desire to retaliate against anyone. It was time to do what I needed and what I desired. No more wishing, no more arriving. No longer giving grace out like candy. I'm hoping it will get me a place at the table. That evening, I began organizing things. Not retaliation, not in the typical sense anyhow. Something more long-lasting. Since they seldom see me at all, it would be unexpected. The initial phase was monetary. You see, I've been doing really good for the last several years. It's where I work. Even though I'm not a billionaire, I have made wise investments, particularly since I started managing properties a few years ago. They don't know since I don't really get asked about my life. I currently own 3 rental properties. They're not sure. Through anonymous grants I established for my LLC, I have been discreetly assisting my parents with expenses such as plumbing and roof repairs. I never required acknowledgement for it. Since they are or were my parents, I just wanted to help them. My mother called me a week after the birthday celebration. She was in a panic. During the season's first heat wave, her home's central air had failed. She added, her voice trembling, "We were told the repairs are going to be over $8,000. According to the person you typically deal with, he did not get the customary maintenance retainer this year. Has the fund experienced any changes?" I informed her coolly that I had ended the grant program. At first she was perplexed, but I didn't explain. Everyone who attended the meal, including you, can probably come up with a solution. She remained silent as I said. I could practically hear her mind racing. I didn't hold off till she answered. I simply hung up the phone, courteously. I phoned my lawyer that same day. I have provided funding for numerous projects throughout the years. Savings for my niece's college education. My uncle's dental procedure is urgent. A part-time helper. My sister's Etsy shop used to benefit from her assistance. I had all of the receipts. They were all unaware. None of them understood that I had linked those money to agreements and provisions that might be revoked with only one signature. I froze the accounts, mailed the letters, and signed them. About 2 weeks passed before the wave reached my inbox. Missed texts and flooded calls. My cousin just told me what's going on in a fast time. However, I didn't answer. The family group discussion followed. Not the one from which I had been barred. The previous one. The one I made 5 years ago when everyone wanted to plan the logistics of the funeral after Grandpa went away. My admin privileges were still in effect. To perhaps get the hint, I renamed the conversation. Then each member was eliminated one at a time. I said nothing at all. Nothing but quiet. However, that was just the start, for there was one item I had not yet retracted. And when I did, everything was different. The thing I still hadn't retracted, the lake house, was the only thing that kept me connected to them. Technically, it wasn't mine. Not quite. My grandfather owned it. Afterward, it was jointly inherited by my mother and my Aunt Val, her sister. My cousin Tara received Val's part after she passed away. It was the same cousin who made fun of me for skipping the family meal. My mom fell behind on some payments years ago, so I discreetly bought out her part. I legally own half. However, the family's mental scorecard was never updated. They continued to treat it as though it were grandma's home. It was freely used by everybody. Holidays, weekends, and even entire summers. I allowed them to do so for years. I didn't save it for myself, never refused. Whenever someone desired to make use of it. Last summer, I even covered the cost of the new doctor, silently, without acknowledgement. Now, however, right now, the lake home served as a platform. I also had the script. I waited for the typical flow of family members during Memorial Day weekend. For more than 10 years, it had been customary. Barbecues, bonfires. While the adults were inebriated from cheap drinks and became as boisterous as the sunset, the children were fishing off the pier. I had not been invited for the past 3 years, but I used to adore it. But I didn't require an invitation this time. All I had to do was turn up. Do a little-known provision in the deed that permitted either owner to petition. Usage of conflict developed when I submitted the papers 3 days before to the weekend to limit shared access to my portion of the property. It was sealed by my attorney. They were able to utilize the house without my interference. To do so, I just needed a co-owner agreement. Of course, Tara hadn't been listening to any of the legal correspondence about me being kind. Eli. I arrived early on Friday morning, unlocked the home, and parked my pickup sideways in the driveway to prevent anyone from following me. I waited after that. It took very little time. 3 automobiles pulled up at noon. My mother, my sister Tara, as well as the children and spouses. Before they noticed me, they were giggling. Tara was the first to go. "Are you present?" Her voice was strained as she said. I grinned. "It's Memorial Day. I hoped the lake would be enjoyable." She approached me directly. Crossed arms. "We're going to stay for the weekend, though." "Mom can have the master," I informed her. "That will be a challenge." "Not unkindly," I said. "For co-owner review, the residence is locked. If you had checked your mail, you would have noticed the message." Bewildered, she blinked. "What? Take note?" "Already agitated," my sister added her voice. "Don't be theatrical, Eli. We have been visiting this place for ages, simply because one meal did not invite you." I extended a hand. "Be calm. There were many dinners. And it had nothing to do with the meal. Respect is at issue. This family has long since stopped providing it." At last, my mother came closer to her voice. "Keep quiet, Eli. We didn't intend to hurt you, honey. It was fair." Things became hectic. "You are aware of the situation." For a moment, I nearly melted as I gazed at her. Nearly. Then I recalled all the times Mother had justified my sister's brutality, dismissed exclusion with a laugh as if it were a miscommunication. He repeatedly played the role of mediator by urging me to be the greater person. I answered, "I know exactly how it is. That's why I'm here right now. This home is no longer a common holiday destination. We design a new agreement if you desire access. We alternate usage and divide up maintenance." Or, I shrugged, "We sell." "You would dare not," Tara responded, raising her voice. "Because of the damaged sentiments, you ruin the family tradition." I looked her in the eye, steady. "No. The family element has already been ruined by you. All I'm doing is paperwork." They tried guilt-tripping, begging, and shouting. My mother started crying. I was referred to be selfish by my sister. Tara made a lawsuit threat. It didn't matter, though. I had all the paperwork. The receipts, the texts, the deeds clause, and the quiet that had been consuming me for years. At last, that was gone. Clarity referred to as necessary, and clear took its place. They eventually departed. Not without hurling a few last words behind my back. I didn't flinch, though. Until the cars vanished down the gravel road, I remained on that porch. After that, I entered, sat in the antique rocking chair and opened a beer. I used to use that night, Grandma. I made a fire in the backyard pit. I watched as the embers, like sparks from some forgotten 4th of July, rose into the sky, and I felt like I belonged somewhere for the first time in a very long time. However, I wasn't finished, so the last part arrived the following morning. I needed to send something else. They would discover that the actual repercussions had not yet begun when they opened it. The only sound I heard when I woke up the following morning was that of birds. There are no children yelling on the dock, no loud Bluetooth speakers coming from outside, no odor of my sister's overcooked bacon, which she always had. Nothing but silence. It was so serene, it was almost uncanny. I also enjoyed it. I made a cup of coffee for myself. I watched the early mist curl off the surface like steam from a boiling secret as I made my way barefoot down to the water. I wasn't depressed, but I had a lot on my mind. Simply concentrate. Finished. It had been a line in the sand the previous evening. Now, however, it was time to set it in stone. I dropped off a thick manila envelope addressed to my family lawyer at the local post office before heading out for the city. The last puzzle piece was inside. I formally decided to sell my half of the lake house to a buyer, not just anybody. I had previously screened an out-of-state private couple. No drama, no children, just retirees looking for a peaceful summer getaway. If they accepted, I would have even given them a marginally better offer. Just one requirement. A gate would be erected. Just enough to identify their portion and legally bar any unintentional visits from extended family members who used to treat the house like their own private retreat. However, the sale contract was not the only item in the envelope. It also contained my exit letter, a single page folded on top of the documents addressed to my entire family. I wrote it slowly, carefully, over 2 nights. I didn't want to be cruel. I just wanted to be honest, brutally, surgically honest. Here's a part of what it said to everyone who forgot me. You may not have realized it, but over the years, I became a ghost in this family. Not because I drifted away, but because you quietly pushed me there with your exclusions, your silence, your smug smirks. When I'd show up still believing I mattered, I was the helper, the giver, the quiet one. That extra at the table, I never asked for much. Just a chair and a little kindness. But your message has been clear. I'm not family. I'm a resource, a wallet, an afterthought, a punchline. So now I'm taking the hint. You won't have to forget to invite me anymore. You won't have to roll your eyes when I show up, or whisper in the kitchen when I leave the room. I'm done with all of it. I'm not angry. I'm not vengeful. I'm simply done. This house. It was the last place where I still felt tethered to any kind of belonging. And now I've let it go. The purchasers are nice. They'll take care of it. And don't worry, they won't tolerate unwelcome guests. Not even on holidays. Consider this letter your formal notice. I'm no longer accessible for guilt, gaslighting, or group talks. I wish you all well. Truly. But from now on, my peace comes first. Eli. 3 days later, my phone buzzed incessantly. Missed calls, voicemails, a rush of texts that escalated from bewildered to fear to enraged in the course of hours. My sister, who hadn't uttered a kind word to me in over a year, suddenly had a lot to say. Things like, "You're hurting Mom's heart, and you're acting like a child." My cousin Tara sent a wall of text that started with, "Are you truly selling the house?" and finished with, "You'll regret this." However, it was my mother's that truly remained with me. There was only one phrase. "Why are you treating us like this?" I spent a lot of time looking at that message. I nearly answered. Even a few distinct items were typed by myself. Some are mild, some are harsh. One version simply stated, "Because you allowed them to." But because she was already aware, I erased everything. The deal closed a week later. The new proprietors assumed control. The family attempted to stop it, but I had majority rights on the deed because of a little-known clause I had activated through my LLC, and Tara hadn't paid her portion of the maintenance taxes. They were unable to stop it, emotionally, monetarily, and legally. It was finished. Summer came and went. They rented a lake in the end, Airbnb, 2 towns away. On my cousin's Instagram, I came upon the pictures. Another document. The energy of acting as though nothing had changed except that it had is the same for grins. They once phoned me behind my back on a hot mic during a group Zoom that I wasn't supposed to hear, so The next time they needed a favor, there wouldn't be Eli to call, no quiet supporter to take over, and no pocketbook with feelings. And I was creating something better as they frantically tried to adapt, a life without invisibility. A new group of friends who never once forced me to beg for a place at the table, but who saw me, valued me, and laughed with me. Retaliation wasn't the point. It has to do with releasing. Don't get me wrong though, there was still another twist. Because an intriguing event occurred at work 2 months after the property transaction was completed. My organization started a new mentoring program, a sponsored effort that encouraged candidates from all around the area to get project management and training. It was made for those who wanted to start again. Indeed, who submitted an application? Tara. She was unaware that the application would end up on my desk, and she was even less prepared for the little message I included with her letter of rejection. Only 6 words. Next time, perhaps follow the hint. It was calmer than I had anticipated in the next weeks. No more messages or phone calls. It seemed as though the silence had now been reciprocal after years of quiet dismissals. I also didn't feel compelled to change it for once. I ceased to follow them on social media. I unsubscribed from the remaining family email threads. I could still clearly remember my phone, more so than I had in years. However, peace is not always simple to achieve. Some nights, I woke up wondering whether I had gone too far, if I should have simply remained the reliable, quiet one, the one who, in order to preserve a tenuous family illusion, bit his tongue. That inner shame had been a comfortable, well-worn garment that was strangely consoling. However, I came to understand that guilt is a tactic used by manipulators when direct control is no longer effective. Letting it go is difficult. However, something new began to develop in its place, so I did. Something more powerful. Honor. A feeling of limits. I had a peculiar but pleasant sense of pride in having, for the first time, chosen myself above others who repeatedly shown that they would not have picked me. Improve your workouts as well. I received a promotion. It turns out that your brain has more space to flourish when you are not continuously exhausted by harmful familial relationships. After years of delaying my journey to Kyoto, one finally made it. Went alone. Spent 2 weeks drinking matches on peaceful balconies while meandering through bamboo jungles. I didn't post about it or make the public aware of it. I simply lived it to the fullest in solitude, and for me, Thanksgiving was when the last thread came loose. It was traditionally held in my parents' house, with a large production that included recipes taken from Grandma's old notebooks. I was the target of my dad's dry turkey, and the customary debates about who should seat closest to the fireplace. Naturally, if I were invited, I would typically be seated on the foldable chair by the entrance or at the far end of the children's table. When I stopped going a few years ago, nobody really noticed. However, this year was different. Someone knocked on my door that morning. My dad was the one. It had been over a year since I last saw him. He appeared somewhat thinner and older. His jet black hair had turned grayer than I had recalled. He held a platter covered in foil. He had bloodshot eyes. I don't believe it was from sobbing. It's the type of sluggish, drawn-out process that occurs when a guy is eventually forced to sit with his decisions. "May I enter?" he inquired. I didn't respond. I simply moved out of the way. He set the food down and took a seat at my kitchen table. "Didn't you offer it?" Didn't provide an explanation. For a long time, he just gazed at the wood grain as if it had answers he didn't have. At last, he continued, "Your mother is not doing well." I gave a nod. When you lose control over people, that's what usually happens. He winced, whether it was the words or my composed delivery of them. "Eli, I don't know if she's sorry. Every day she says it." I sat across from him and poured him a drink of water. She told me that face to face for years. He appeared to want to dispute. "You were right to walk away," he replied with a sigh. "I didn't anticipate that," he added. I informed her that we need to have approached the situation differently, and that you shouldn't have been treated like an outcast in your own family. I attempted to discuss it with your sister. She accuses you of being theatrical and harboring resentment. I chuckled quietly, not with laughter but with astonishment. She does, of course. She's also not doing well. Her Etsy store shut down. She is currently residing with us. Your mother is under a great deal of stress." And he gave me a glance. At last. Glance closely. "I'm not here to make you feel bad. I came to this realization, which is why I am here. It wasn't you who left the family behind. We left you behind. We just grew accustomed to the notion that you would never resist. There was a heavy quiet between us. I read your letter, he added. I arched an eyebrow. The one you forwarded to the attorney? After the house was sold, he sent me a copy. I read it 3 times. Every time I sobbed. I was at a loss for words. He said, "You're a better man than I ever gave you credit. I apologize that losing you and the house was necessary to witness it. I trusted him. I have no idea why, but I did." His voice had an unpolished quality, not theatrical, simply exhausted. I got up, went to the refrigerator, and took out a little pumpkin pie that I had bought the previous day. I put 1 piece in front of him after slicing 2. No turkey. "But it's real whipped cream," I said. He gave a little smile. From then on, we didn't communicate much, only ate. 2 guys without a clear path forward, and too much history between them. However, it was something. It's a beginning, not a complete fix or reconciliation. And I made it plain that if anything changed in the future, it would be on my terms. No more taking a backseat in my own narrative. No more appeasement. A few days later, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. I read it twice. I then put it aside. I wasn't prepared to answer. Perhaps I would never. It's not always easy to forgive, and it's not always accompanied with change. Weeks went by. With a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in years, I was heading into winter. Peace was earned. Then I received a text message right before Christmas. Not from my sister, not from Tara, from my nephew Liam. The message was sent via video. "Uncle Eli, hello." He spoke into the camera with a toothless smile. "I miss you, even though Mom says we shouldn't communicate. I told her that was stupid. I hope all is well with you. Another Lego spacecraft is being built by me. This time it has 3 engines behind him." My sister's voice yelled at me. "Give me the phone, Liam." The video ended. I repeatedly watched it. Anger was not the cause of the pain in my chest. Only sadness. Not for me. For him. For what purpose? He was being pulled into the vicious cycle of marginalization. The use of quiet as a weapon. That wasn't fair to him. I returned a video as a result. "Hello, friend." Grinning, I said. "That spacecraft sounds fantastic. It's perhaps the galaxy's fastest. I also miss you. I'm also always available." Regardless of what others may say. All right? Since I meant it, it didn't matter that I never heard back. Hurting them was never the main goal of the retaliation. Stopping the harm they inflicted on me by erecting barriers was the goal. To protect, not to punish. And perhaps just possibly someone in the following generation won't experience feelings of invisibility as they grow up. Perhaps they will discover saying no, setting boundaries, and leaving individuals who only show you affection when it's convenient are all okay. For my part, I'm doing well. I purchased a new property. A big front porch, a genuine fireplace, and a smaller, cozier space. I make dinners that aren't actually terrible and throw gaming evenings for my buddies. I'm laughing more, get a better night's sleep. Additionally, when old pictures of me standing off to the side at family events appear on my phone, I half smile and half hope I can swipe past them. Not because I have resentment, since I am free.